and thank you for being here tonight. We're having a follow-up session from our January workshop with Terry Reeves on conflict management. Many of you felt like the subject was so complex and required a deeper dive, and so that's what we're here with tonight, and I thank you for joining us. And many of you know Terry, but just in case any of you do not, Terry is a social scientist and owner and founder of Empower Health America. Empower Health America is a consulting firm focusing on organizational change, leadership development, team training, and coaching. Terry has a Master's of Science in Organizational Development and Talent Management from Queen's University of Charlotte. She is a public speaker, BCC certified coach, and she is certified in organizational mindfulness and yoga teacher training. Well, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Terry, and we will get going. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Barbara. And so this will be interesting. We had created framework, and gosh, we were there for what, 2.5 hours. And then we thought, you know what, let's have more of a town hall meeting without a formal PowerPoint, making it a little bit more conversational and perhaps create a little bit more of an intimate environment to drive a little bit deeper into areas that you guys would find most beneficial. And I did have some requests to do a grounding exercise at the beginning, but what I might do, just in case a few more people jump in, is maybe open the floor just to have you share maybe what would be most meaningful for you tonight. And it may change. You might have a few things that you want to make sure that I cover. And then as we get deeper into discussion, you might say, hey, that triggered another thought. Can we talk about this? So it's going to be that kind of informal, which can be a lot of fun. And we have control of sort of taking ourselves as a group into the places that are most valuable. So maybe for the next like 2 or 3 minutes, if you can definitely unmute yourself for sure. And perhaps just share, like, if there's 1 or 2 things that we could spend time focused on tonight that would bring me great joy and would be very valuable, it would be these things.
I would like to talk about difficult conversations and how to have difficult conversations when the other person is resistant to difficult conversations, or even just opening up for any conversation. I mean, even in our group session, there were people at the table not participating. And I just, like, even though you give space for people to participate, but then it almost seems like forceful when you're trying to force people to participate. So that's a question I had just based on our experience that day.
Yeah, and would this also be something that perhaps we encounter with even parent conference exchanges and or administrative conversations and trying to lobby for resources?
Coworkers, everything. There's some people that are just, they're just resistant, or maybe even like in coaching opportunities, they're resistant to reflect even. That's another issue.
Say that last thing again, Chantel.
They're resistant to reflect upon themselves. So when you're in a coaching opportunity, it's really hard when somebody's on the defensive instead of really saying, well, what do you think went really well, or what didn't go well, and well, everything was fine, and they're resistant to that.
Yeah, no, that's a great topic, and I bet Amy and Kelly would value some conversation around that as well. So thank you. I appreciate you going first. How about Amy or Kelly? What are your thoughts around time and valued topics?
Kelly, I just want to be a sponge for whatever you have to say. I also had a request for I was the guided person, the imagery, and it kind of goes along with my question. I'm a very passionate person. It kind of drives what I do and advocacy. And I wondered if there was a strategy you use, especially in those difficult conversations where Chantel is talking about they're not listening or they don't want to talk, how I don't want to be numb to where I'm not aware of my feelings, but how to remain calm and make sure my tone is, the tone's right, the volume's right, I grew up around sports, with these coaches that it go crazy. So how to do this in a more, professional environment, not in a coaching field.
Tailor your enthusiasm to match the audience in which you are exchanging with, right? I know. It's that emotional intelligence. And part of it is awareness, Kelly. I mean, exactly what you just said is my background is I'm a coach, that kind of like rah rah, like kind of energy. And so knowing that that works well in the right scenarios, and then how do you tailor that, not lose the enthusiasm or the intensity, but tailor it so that it resonates and lands on the people that you're trying to, interface with in a positive way. Yeah, I love that. That's great awareness already. So that's good. And the irony of this is I had a couple of requests to actually do sort of a grounding exercise to get us started. And I'd like to do it in a way that's in context for how we can use this in our lives. And this is a perfect example. Amy's got a lot going on that's happened to her family and to herself. And you're coming in, what I call coming in hot and just trying to get grounded and acclimated. And it does speak to how we need to give ourselves some compassion as teachers. And in managing difficult conversations, it already is a bit more challenging than the happy conversations because those don't create any anxiety or fear, right? And so when we're coming into challenging conversations, all the more reason to sort of take a moment before maybe we even go into the conference room or whatever space we've chosen. It might even be a Zoom call, right? To have a conference with, a coworker, an administrator or a parent or parents. And this ability to sort of know where you are emotionally and to know that you take that energy into any situation with you and to give yourself some level of compassion. And I'm just a big believer of leading with awareness and compassion for self first. And it's in that awareness that we can sort of go, okay, I'm feeling a little, maybe not grounded, a little scattered. Maybe there's some things that have me feeling a little sad or whatever there might be, but to acknowledge that. And we might not be able to control or fix it, but just some level of acknowledgement. And I would say for yourselves and or the parents or an administrator, if you get into a meeting and the energy is not right, people are distracted, there's stress, there's just big, heavy things happening that might impede your ability to have an optimal conversation, then often it's really important to give yourself grace and say, hey, maybe let's pick this up tomorrow. Let's reconvene. Let's talk about a mutual time that works because it's nothing worse than going into a really important conversation not feeling at ease. And so I wanted to just bring it up in the context of moving us into this pause moment because there's such an opportunity, I think, to use these types of exercises prior to tougher conversations, just to get yourself clear and grounded. So did that kind of wrap it into some context on how you can actually use it? And why it's important, and then we'll just do it. We'll spend like 2 or 3 minutes just doing what I'm talking about and feeling the impact of it. So I'll encourage everybody to just close your eyes, and that will allow you to kind of drop in. The visual distractions become a little less intrusive. And if you can just for a moment feel your body's connection to the chair that you're in, like just sense this connectivity and then feel your feet on the ground, knowing that you are present, solid in this moment. And then there is this beautiful thing called breathing and this deeper awareness around breath. So begin to bring focus into breathing, inhale through the nose, about 5 seconds, just a big, deep belly breath, pushing the breath deep into the body. And then slowly exhale and allow that breath to release very slowly. And see if you can keep the mouth closed, keeping breath coming deeply in through the nose and then back out through the nose. And just allow yourself to be. And there may be definitely distraction. The mind is very active. So just be a witness to what is coming up for you without judgment or attachment. And perhaps there could be this compassion that you have. Perhaps you're more aware of your energy, maybe the things that are ruminating in your mind. And try not to judge any of it, just to give yourself some grace, just to breathe in and out slowly. Finding perhaps a bit more rootedness. Know that you're present in the moment, grounded, connected, supported in this space. And just letting go as much as you can of any excessive thought. And just bring this deeper awareness into the body, into the focus around breathing. And then just begin to notice your connection to your own physical body. So we often disassociate when we're busy living in a headspace place, just actively doing all day. And so coming home or wherever you are, just allowing yourself to bring it down a notch. And just letting there be a deeper awareness of the physical sensations that you might be feeling. And just noticing, perhaps gaining more clarity. And as you breathe, just knowing that you're calming the central nervous system, which is really good for allowing you to process information, to be more present, have more clarity, more compassion. And as we breathe more deeply, the brain actually gets flooded with oxygen, which allows us to think more logically, to be more creative. So as we breathe, we can maybe reflect on how we can use this, what I call transition practice, when we are about to move from one space to the next, and perhaps to get grounded before we enter into conversations, or before we get out of our car and walk into the house, just giving ourselves a moment to land. And how this might help us, certainly in dealing with conflict, certainly in allowing ourselves to have a moment to pause and check in. This awareness can be incredibly valuable for self-care, self-awareness. Probably sets us up for better conversations in general. Our ability to exchange with others because we're a bit more aware of where we are. And just take about 3 more deep breaths. Make them full, deep. As you exhale, see if you can let go of any tension that you might be aware of that you're holding on to. Take one final collective breath together, inhaling, and then let it go. Distraction, tension, just let it go. And then when you're ready, just coming back to the present moment, the eyes begin to open. No rush, no rush. Yeah, so I love experiential teaching and experiencing and learning. And of course, I'm speaking to teachers, so you guys are the experts in how to communicate and educate in a very powerful way. And we do know that when we can engage people in experiences, they're far more powerful and meaningful than just telling people how important it is to pause. So when we experience it, it hits us at a much deeper, more profound level. And hopefully it lives in us. So next time we need a moment, we've done something that doesn't cost money, a lot of time, a lot of energy, no equipment needed, but quite powerful, quite powerful. Do we feel a little bit more grounded as a group? I know, right? Just like 3 minutes. It's crazy, crazy. If we could get our kids to do that, our administrators to do that, our coworkers to do that, the children, the parents, but we can certainly model behavior. And we can control the only controllable, and that's sort of the things that we decide to do. And model good behavior, because it's better to show by action than telling people what to do. So anyway, we feel good, better, more grounded. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So let me just move us for a minute to, did everybody get the handouts that I sent? That would be one question. Make sure that, did you get a chance to read them yet? Yes or no? And if you didn't, it's okay. Yes, No, it's okay. This is a safe space. There is no judgment. So the framework document, I think, is a really good one. And I thought what I could do is maybe have more of a dialogue during this time. And what I'm gonna do is create framework by using how we can set ourselves up for successful conversations, using the document so that you can go back and kind of use it as framework. But I want it to come to life. And so I'd like for there to be some scenarios that we put out there that you're experiencing that sort of align with the guidelines and just make it more of a dialogue than me just throwing up step one, step two. I just think that will be very transactional. So open up your mics by turning on your, or taking your mute buttons off, unless you have something really crazy going on in the background. And I want to ask you some questions. As teachers, do you find that it's challenging to set the stage for challenging conversations in the workforce that you live in? Because we know creating safety and trust is really important right out of the gate. And making sure that we've established a place where people can come and feel like they are gonna be safe, there's confidentiality, there is focused attention, there's not a lot of distraction. So I'm just curious what you guys encounter when you are dealing with, yeah, Kel.
So, like, a lot of times it feels like I'm multitasking. So if I call the office and there's a student who is really upset about something, or maybe I need to go to guidance, or they're yelling at another student or something, a lot of times the um the resource officer who comes to the room wants me to explain it to them why they want to go, and then it gets the kid all riled up, and it's like in the hallway slash in the door. So I don't, other than parent conferences that are pre-arranged, it
Yeah.
seems like that space is really hard to get unless it was like a Zoom call where there's some facial, parameters.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, in the absence of being able to create like a bubble around a portion of the room, right? You can't build walls that don't exist, so it appears that some of the stuff is conflict in the moment. And you don't have some safe place to go have those conversations. And so my recommendation is maybe two things, and I'd love if other people have ideas as well, is to consider a safe space in the classroom where there's a designated space that if this stuff happens, that this is a safe space that we go. And maybe it's a corner, not as private as ideally we want, but that becomes a safe bubble space. And then perhaps there is a moment, because if you can get kids to breathe for 2 minutes, it's gonna help to stabilize even their emotion. So just integrating this 2-minute pause and beginning to do that, not reactive and even proactive. And I'm a big believer, the 2-minute pause is a very fabulous technique to use in many different situations. And maybe starting to do that proactively so the class even knows what that is and why they're doing it, and they feel it and they have fun with it. And so then when it's something that you're doing reactive in the case of conflict, they already are equipped, they've done it before, they understand the benefits. And then having this safe zone, if you will, gets people prepared that we're not just gonna have it in the middle of the class, we're gonna go into this space, although we don't have a door, but it's where we're gonna go to decompress. And we're gonna come into this place of calm, and it may begin to help change people's behavior around, just feeling more at ease. Just because you've established some proactive guidelines around when that happens, how can we create the safest space and not the most ideal situation? Does that make sense?
Yes, I used to do that before the classrooms got so many students in them. So I kind of gave up that space, but I know that I could try to reclaim it and be inventive.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe it's, it's teaching the kids to face forward. We're having a private conversation in the back and, wouldn't we wanna create safe, intimate space if you were back in this space having a really emotional conversation. So it's almost like creating a charter with the class in advance on when there are disruptions, how do we want to respect one another? And they begin to be part of the solution, and that helps kids sort of feel like, okay, that's maybe gonna happen to me someday, so what would I want? So again, buy-in by not telling, but getting sort of the joint decision making. And you know, you don't know till you try, but it certainly beats not trying something, right? I mean, and maybe out of trying something, something else emerges. Right, that's how ideation and creativity work, so, yeah. So any other thoughts around that? And that we know that trust is critical. Any other challenges just in terms of space and time and intention?
Terry,
Yeah,
okay, I'm with Kelly. The classes are so full now.
yeah,
There's no space in the classroom where you can just, feel like you can have a private conversation. So I've been stepping outside the door.
nice.
I'm right there in the threshold, and I leave the door cracked so I can still keep an eye on the class. And then I face the student like facing me, but I can see inside the classroom and see the student.
So smart.
That seems to make them feel comfortable, like it's just them. I'm just only talking to them. And they seem to open up just right outside the door.
Yeah. I mean, when we're elevated, the emotions are high, and anything that we can do to create psychological safety, anything that we can do to help someone regulate, which is to take some deep breaths, even just to pause for 30 seconds before we start straight into, kind of reprimanding or trying to solve, is just giving everybody a moment of stillness. And I love that, Robin. I mean, if the classroom has the space to create a safe space, then if not, you've got plan B, or maybe that is the better alternative, is we know there'll be a little bit of hallway traffic maybe, but significantly less. And it creates that barrier, people just, if we don't feel safe, we're not gonna be the best version of ourselves, especially if we're elevated, so. Yeah, so if we look at, and you think about, just how can we create the safest space possible? And then how can we help, how can we self-regulate, how can we help the person, child, parent, coworker in front of us self-regulate? And it's sort of identifying, what is the problem, seeking mutual understanding. And it doesn't go straight into tactical fix, it goes into compassion first. Leaning in and establishing that, hey, this is a safe space for us to talk. And what's going on with you, validating emotion. And I mean, this transcends every age, so no matter who you're talking to. If the most important thing is people want to be heard, seen, and valued. And so sometimes just allowing the person that is a bit more elevated to like talk. And then you begin to hear what is really bothering me, because you'll begin to hear the triggers, you'll begin to hear the patterns, you'll begin to sense where you can probe and ask, more clarifying questions. And the person that's talking is also letting go of anxiety. They are blowing off steam. You're allowing them to get to a more calm place, and then you have more information. Because in this case, if we're going in a little bit more equipped than maybe the person that we're dealing with, parent or child or coworker, to have them talk is a great gift to give them, and it's also a great gift to give yourself. Because then you can go in and say, okay, this is what I hear you say, paraphrasing, right? Tell me what is most important to you. Did I get that right? Is there anything else that's really important to you? Because the more information we can get, the more space we hold for people to share, the more trust that is built, the more compassion that is literally occurring because we're holding space for somebody to express themselves. Yep, and then we can begin to take that information and begin to peel the onion back to the next layers. Yeah, Kathy?
I was wondering, back in the day, we used to do think sheets, and the student would reflect before we talk to them. When I think about empathy, I'm wondering, do we still do that, or is it better to be in person with them as they share their thought. I just wondering what your thought was on that process.
That's a great idea. I think about extroverts, right? Extroverts are gonna be like external
Mhm.
processors, buddy, they're gonna be like, he pinched me, or she did this, or whatever, or the parents like, we can't get the grades, we can't do all the homework, I mean, whatever the is, right? And so those people are probably a little more amped up, and as a result of that, an extrovert's probably gonna be able to express themselves, good, bad, or indifferent, it's just gonna come out more naturally. And so I think it would be situational, I think if you've got some parents and or children or coworkers that are more introverted, they might need more time to process. And I think that's showing great emotional intelligence and respect to say, hey, if you need more time to process this, do you want me to send you some questions in advance? Is there anything I can do to create a space for you that allows you to come in feeling more prepared and at ease? Because if you've got an introvert and you're asking them to express themselves, that's actually gonna add more anxiety and be triggering potentially to them. So I think that both could work. I think to play around with, and maybe even jointly decide that, in advance of a parent-teacher conference is, so let's talk about what this is gonna look like, what's gonna be most valuable to you, what's our goal, what's the intention, what do you need from me in advance in order to process? So you move in, because it's all about agency, right? People want to feel in control. And the teacher already is in control in a parent conference. And or, coworkers, it's sort of even, right? But clearly the parent, I mean, the teacher, it's a child. So there is some leveling there that automatically makes people feel like not as in control because of the position, right? So if we can get rid of as much of that as we possibly can by giving more agency and voice to whomever it is before they have to step into a tough conversation. Because whoever sits with the most information, whoever's driving the meeting, sits with the greatest amount of control. And if we're coming in some way feel not in control, or we might be reprimanded, or we don't really know what we're walking into, that can create a lot of anxiety for people. So I do think some pre-prep questions, or even some jointly designing what's gonna be most helpful for you. And I know when you're dealing with like issues that are just happening in the moment. It's like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. It's just happening. So you have to de-escalate, which we were kind of talking about. But this is a little bit maybe for a child who might need a moment to write his feelings, and or in a parent, like a parent teacher conference where you have parents coming in that aren't necessarily equipped to have the best conversations with you. So does that help us a little bit? Just give me some framework on preparation. So, if we keep moving through, and a lot of this, I don't wanna like go through it step by step, because I think it's just great information for you to go back through and reference, because it's pretty straightforward. But if we start to go like Chantal into your thoughts is, if if in any situation, we don't have buy-in as to why we're there, it's gonna be very difficult to get people to move forward. And often that can happen because, it's like when people do a lot of surveys and then people take a lot of time and energy and provide their insights and then nothing's done. People get disenchanted, disillusioned. They start to let go of hope. They just kind of show up and go through the motions. They disengage, and it's very difficult to get them emotionally connected. And so I think that disconnect is the ability to discuss the undiscussables. Is I can tell that we're in this room and we're all adults, but I get this clear sense that we don't have engagement as humans together in this moment trying to solve for something. And literally say, what do we need to do so that we can create a more engaged conversation? What are the barriers? What's going on with us, right? This team dynamic where we're not really leaning in. We're not playing, we're really sitting back and being a witness, which is not bad sometimes, right? You're assessing information and bringing it in, but sometimes that's disengagement. So I think it's trying to determine, is the engagement or the lack of engagement because they're an introvert and sitting back and processing more, or they disengage because they're disenchanted. And so I think you have to sort of just ask that tough question. But with a lot of respect, right? I sense that there is disengagement, but I don't want to make any assumptions. But I do care about you and your opinion, and we know that this is a big issue. We have to figure out a way to work together. So, in just sort of sharing those thoughts, does that spark any?
Yeah, so like, just to piggyback off Kelly, she had said something really early on about multitasking. So, when you go into, teachers go into meetings, they're the worst students, right? So they're doing 50 other things. And you're like, they're typing away. You're like, we're in a meeting, people. Like, so that's one problem, right? We have so many things to do in this short amount of time. So I think when you approach someone like a mentee and they're like, okay, well, I'm supposed to meet with you and I only have 10 minutes, but I have this, and this to do. And I might have something really valuable to ask them, but their mind is on all the other tasks. And that's a lot of what the problem is. And then I think to also add, it's a sense of vulnerability, like to say, well, like, let's just say I have a new mentee. She's about my age. So obviously mid-50s, it's first time teaching. And she's like, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Well, you can't be doing great because I've been doing this since 2000, what is it? 1990, sorry, 1994. Like, it's all these years of mistakes that I've made to get me to where I am now. And I want to help her, like, okay, well, how are your small groups? Everything's fine. Everything's fine. So how do I break through that?
Yeah,
And that's like, it's a vulnerability thing of,
Mhm.
she's not confident. And this is just one example because I also have student teachers and, it's just trying to break that barrier of, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. Like, it's okay to not be perfect. That's what we're here for. Like, I'm here to help you. And some people, I guess they feel like failures if they ask for the help. And so, like, I have a coaching role, even though I'm a teacher, I'm coaching as well. And it really becomes, I have two types of people that I'm helping. One is the new person who's afraid or maybe doesn't know what they're not doing correctly.
yeah,
And then the other person is the seasoned person who's very resistant and negative. Like, why do we have to have this new curriculum? Why do we everything's a complaint? So these are the two kinds of people, because hence these are the people that need coaching, right? And I'm coming in
and you're
all
a
like,
great coach, Chantel. I
love
know.
this curriculum, right? I
Yeah.
love that change. This is great. And they are looking at me like, I don't need your help. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a little,
So it's interesting. They say the coach will appear when the student is ready.
yeah,
However, we can lead by example. We
yeah,
can establish some protocols around meetings, like cell phones turned down. Full attention for 10 minutes is better than fractured attention for 30.
yeah.
Right, full attention for 10 minutes is better than fractured attention for 30. And so just sort of establishing some respectful expectations of being fully present and why that's so important. And then it's also hard to build trust when there's lots of disruption and things happening. One thing that I've found, Chantel, that does help is to say, let's celebrate what's well developed. So let's land in a place that you feel confident. And then the vulnerability can kind of like happen because they feel confident and they can sort of voice some areas that they think are going well. And then you can say, what are some areas that you think are less well developed? Like, for example, for me, like, these are things I do well, these are areas I'm challenged in. And so you can even share some vulnerability by your own. And then framing it up like that is not like where you challenged or what's not working, it's like what's less well developed. Or where are you finding barriers for things being optimal, right? So it's because I think that's what we're trying to do, right? Is get them to assess where they might be able to grow. And then also to be honest about what barriers are happening within the school system that are keeping you from achieving optimal performance for you, the students, whatever that scenario might be. And then the other piece is what is sucking you dry of joy? Because I think those are the two things. What is causing you the greatest pain? And who doesn't want to say, boy, I wish I had more hours in the day? You know, I mean, people, we all experience pain. And so to be able to acknowledge that and put a pin in it, like name it and claim it, and then go, well, so these are some things I've done for time management, or what do you do to manage time? So there begins to be a little bit more dialogue around it. And it's sort of like a solving thing rather than something's broken, right? So it's shifting the mindset, if that makes sense. Does that help a little bit, or does that spark
Yeah,
any
because
other?
I've even gone in and just focused on just positive, like I'm not gonna give any feedback, like I'm just gonna be all positive, and then, because I'm trying to build that relationship, and then
Yeah.
at the end and say, well, what do you think you could have done better? Like, is there something that I say, because even after all these years, no matter what lesson I teach, I can always say, you know what, I should have explained this better, or I could have taken out this model, and it's like all of a sudden it's this stiffening up, like, oh, nope, I'm not gonna talk about that. And it's
Yeah, yeah,
happening
so,
kind of a lot. Like I'm seeing this trend and I
yeah,
don't know how to break through. I don't know, Kelly, if you have, so I saw your hand up.
Well, I think, um, in the wording, perhaps for me, when I hear because I'm a perfectionist, if I hear what could I have done better, then I internalize it as I wasn't making an effort in trying.
Okay.
So maybe like, what are some things you didn't think of, or things that you, like she said, notice that are challenging? It might make me less on guard. And also, when you have everything positive, you're always waiting for the shoe to drop because the coach has got to say something because that's what you're there for, to make us better. So yeah.
yeah, Kelly, to build off of that, and Chantel, to flip it, right, kind of to flip the mindset to go, what's well developed, and that's what you do well, let's celebrate that, that's what good coaches do,
Right,
help people celebrate and flex. And then it's like,
right,
what do you think, what are the things that you are interested in working on, rather than what do you think you could have done better? It's just reframing the
right,
verbiage, and then also finding out, again, what causes you stress, that's gonna lead you into a pretty curious area. And then what are the barriers that you're running into? Because then you're all of a sudden on the same side of the
right. And I want to be, right,
right,
yeah,
exactly. And then it's like, okay, or you could say, this is what I've done to solve for that in the past. What have you found to be helpful? And then you're beginning to have this collaborative conversation. Because usually what's less well developed is either things they're unaware of or maybe slightly aware of, but don't have the tools. And sometimes the things that are causing them stress are those things. So they're kind of often pretty
yeah,
closely aligned. And so I think that to actually write down some questions. I mean, like literally, okay, how can I reframe my questions so that it wouldn't trigger somebody to feel like they didn't do a good job or they have to defend
right.
themselves? And that
Yeah,
might
I don't want
be
them to feel that way. Like, I think it's a great, I want to have a relationship,
yeah,
I want
yeah,
to be real, like, but
yeah,
not, my point is to help them grow, just like a student, right? Like you're
yeah,
helping the student grow. So I
yeah,
want them to grow to be better. Like I've suggested, like, oh, and they say, well, I'm having such trouble with such and such a student. Well, why don't you ask your coworker, or they have somebody similar, see what they're doing with Bobby, or instead of being about what I've done, I try to like make it less about what I've done because it's
yeah.
like maybe I'm over seasoned, you know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, there's so and so across the hall. Maybe they have a good idea of how they're dealing with this child or that type of
You're
situation.
a fine wine, so you're supposed to be seasoned. Don't be hiding that seasoning. Okay. First of all, second, it would annoy me if I had to go see somebody else because I probably more than likely tried to talk to the person, but wasn't sure how to ask the question. And
Okay,
also, I never thought about it from, like your point of view as like a mentor, because society has seasoned me as an educator to be on the defense because it feels like we're always proving our worth. And
right,
we would want you to know that we are worthy, but if we admit we did something wrong, then we are the thing that parents and stuff accuse us of. And so
right.
it's kind of like I never thought of that dynamic in these conversations until you said that.
Yeah, and that's great just to hear what you said. You're right, because I do feel like it's an automatic wall that goes up. Even when I just walk in the room, then all of a sudden they're nervous. I don't want people to be nervous. I'm like, oh, I'm just coming to hang out for a little bit, talk to the kids, or I don't want to make anybody nervous. I want to enjoy that relationship. And, I want to work on what they want to work on, not necessarily, maybe if there's something that I could use with the data, like, hey, look at this data. Why don't we try to grow this? What do you think we should do? Because it really is about them learning how to problem solve, them learning how to reflect, not on what I think is best. I mean, it's about them growing and learning. So, yeah.
You may even, Chantel, say, hey, what would create the best environment for, this mentorship? What is it that would create a safe space for you? Because as educators, we know everybody kind of assimilates information slightly different. And you're gonna get introverts and ambiverts and
Yeah.
extroverts as you're coaching different people, and we're all coaching, we're all leaders, right? So it's like, who's in front of me? If I really want to help them, what is my intention? And what's the impact? And even just starting with that, say, our intention is for this to be a mentorship that's going to be impactful for you and helpful for you. And I can't create that. Like, we have to create that together. And so let's talk about what that would look like. What would these sessions, let's design what this session would look like together. And then it kind of takes this level and brings it down to more of a partnership. And that may be you could try it as,
Yeah.
I do that a lot. I mean, because you're trying to create the differential, the power differential. And you're trying to give agency to the person that feels like they are less than. And how do we level that up so there's some compassion, some trust, some vulnerability, all the things that we know we want.
Right.
Yeah, so giving people voice and how things are conducted is pretty powerful. So that's another thing. Let me make sure, I'm doing a time check, and I don't mind going over a little bit, but I do know, Kelly, you had a question about, managing and reading the room. And I know there were some questions, and I did develop a handout for you, but in terms of, age and generational challenges, those are two things, like, I don't wanna like be remiss in not saying it out loud and then spending some time around that if the group would like to. And also, Chantel, I don't wanna cut you off because we were having some good conversation around, but you do feel like we kind of had a little bit of dialogue that gave you some ideas? Good, okay. So, maybe Kelly, with your thought around how do you temper and how do you show up for yourself and others? And then the generational piece, those are two things I'd love to just put out on the table. Maybe to ask for the voices of the group to say, is there something in those two topics that we want to like land in for a few minutes? Because I'm delighted to do both, or the one that's the most valuable to the group.
Well, I mentor new teachers also, and one of the things that I've kind of struggled with is not generational so much, but when I mentor men, I don't know why, but they seem to be a little intimidated, and it's like they they already know. Every time I say something, it's like, yeah, I know that, or I've done that. And I'm like, well, I'm not seeing it, you know? So I'm just like,
You're not doing it well. I'm just kidding. I would never do
well,
that.
The women go on and on about all the details. The guys are like, okay, this is a situation, and they might not share all the details.
yeah,
Sorry,
I
couldn't
mean,
help it.
I don't, I just would like to be able to be a better mentor to men. And I'm not sure, how to do that because they seem a little intimidated. And I don't know if they really are intimidated because I've been teaching a lot longer, or if it's the gray hair. I don't know.
Love it. Well, it's, all right, so it's interesting, right? I mean, men process slightly differently. They go straight to solve. You know, often they have an intention and then the impact is not exactly what they wanted, because they do tend to just go straight in. And women are a bit more of, we gather, we harmonize, we are a little slower, we are a little bit more compassionate, just by nature, just genetically, the way we're wired. We know that. So it would be interesting, Robin, to get a couple of guy teachers that you really respect and they really respect you. And maybe have like almost a fireside chat conversation with them and say, hey, you guys are men, I'm not. You know, my intent is to coach and to help people grow. Men, women, old, young, different generations, you know, the impact I want to have is they leave feeling like they've learned something, they felt safe and inspired. And I was able to depart without telling them what to do, but some wisdom that maybe helps to guide them. And, you know, that's probably your intention. And maybe to talk to some guys and say, hey, how would this land? Tell me what and how you as a guy would respond. Because it would be interesting. Because I coach a lot of guys. And I find that my coaching style is a little different with them. I don't lean as quickly and as deeply into compassion. I stay a little bit more strategic at the beginning. And I ease people into the deep end, because if I go straight into the heart, it doesn't seem to resonate. Now, we know there are people that are exceptions. Absolutely. We absolutely know that. But there does seem to be a very tactical, here's the problem, here's a hammer, here's the nail. Bam, I just want to start hitting it. Right, and so it would be, I would encourage you, I would be curious to get some dialogue going and tell them your concerns, like, is there anything that you could tell me or provide feedback about how not to be intimidated? Or intimidating, or are there questions I could pose? Or just behavioral shifts that I might deploy with men versus women? And just see what they say. I mean, I'm not a guy, so I'm not the right person to really speak deeply on that, but I think that would be a very fun exercise.
Okay, I can try that.
And then I'd love to hear the outcome of that. I think that would be very interesting.
I'd be able to write a book or something on that.
I know. Robin, you know what, there's a couple that I'll do a little bit of research and see if I can find anything on male versus female mentorship type, like data that could provide some insight. I'd be curious of that on my own, and I'll do some research and I'll forward anything that I find, you know, to the group.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Robin, I know I had one for 2 years. And boy, I had to be quick with him, or he didn't want to hear it. He didn't have time. And I just based it all on data. That was the only thing that's like the only, if you had, I didn't have data the first year because he was new. Then once he got the data, I was like, well, what is your role? He goes, I just want to make bonus. Well, this is how we're going to do it. So it was like, it gave me,
Well,
that's all he cared about was making the bonus. He didn't care about any of the teaching styles, or he didn't want to hear it. He just wanted to make that bonus.
so this
And
is, I'm Chantel, okay, so I think this is cool, because this is not men, women, this is just different personalities, it's what's important to you.
right,
Motivates you? Those are two really good questions to get to the foundation of the human that's in front of you. If you've ever done any assessments like DISC or Workplace Big Five, and there's a lot of them out there, the D in the DISC are drivers. They want data, they want bottom line on top, they want the facts, and they want it fast.
That's
And so,
me.
right, and if you don't meet that person there, especially if their skills to meet you are not well developed, you'll lose them. So sometimes we, as more aware humans, meet people that we recognize are that profile. They may not realize they need to slow their roll, but we realize we might need to speed ours up, because that's what they need in order to be engaged and for us to speak their language in order to move and advance the ball forward in whatever direction or for whatever reason. But just knowing your audience is what's important to you, and then what motivates you, and what's your communication style is another really important question. Because some people do want data bottom line on top. Some people don't want to go straight into like just transactional business. They want to sit and talk for 5 or 10 minutes and just check in. So kind of getting to know who you're with. And you can ask that, say, hey, look, I can jump straight into business, like if that's your profile. But if you want to sit and just kind of get grounded for a second, if that would make you feel more comfortable, I will flex in a way that, supports you. So just even having that awareness is pretty cool. So I'm glad that you said that, Chantel, about you had a person that just, this is how they were motivated, how they were wired, right?
Mhm.
My question, about the reading the room, so to speak, is like I noticed the younger generation of students are more aware of tone or the way you say something, even if it is something they need to stop doing or whatever, they're very sensitive. So like for me, if like a kid is hitting another student, in a moment I don't think about like, hey honey, stop hitting that other student. I'm like, stop hitting that other student. You know what I mean? But then it it comes back to bite me sometimes because in the meeting the parent will say, well, you yelled at Johnny because Johnny was hitting Clarissa. And I get mad because I'm like, well, why is it okay that Johnny hits Clarissa? Why are we focusing on me and not what's going on So I didn't know if there is that's something I need to work on, but I just didn't know.
So think about a firefighter. They have to simulate fires in order to self-regulate on how not to lose their mind if there's a fire that just sparks up next to them. So it's kind of like that happens in the emotions of children. There's a fire. And it's pretty normal, the fight, flight, or freeze. There's a fight or a fire. It's like, stop, stop. You want to run and immediately like just there's a lot of emotion, right? So I think you started to answer your own question, Kelly, with the pausing. And then maybe there is a word that you decide that is the word for the class, and maybe it is stop. 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 And you repeat it 3 or 4 times. And if you have to gently physically pull the kids apart, but it's no more words than that. It's just one powerful word that's repeated. And maybe it's echoed with timeout, stop. I mean, just like things that will help, and I don't have lots of fights that break out, but I have to deal with a lot of students sometimes that are loud, right? And you have to get their attention. So I do use the music sometimes. And I know you guys were around the ding. I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
you can use something like that just breaks. Because what you want to do is you want to break the pattern that's happening. You want to break the energetic pattern. And screaming, even though it's warranted if somebody's being hurt, that's your natural tendency, it adds fuel to the flame because it creates more of that kind of anxiety. And that yelling can really like almost exacerbate. And I'm not saying you're yelling, but maybe just watching less words and just repeating and just stern and just watching, just stern tone, but not elevated in volume, if that makes sense. So that may help a little bit in that scenario. I want to ask just one question and we can go back to that, Kelly. Amy, did you have a question a minute ago? I wanted to make sure that I was entering you into this team discussion, but I also don't want you to, jump in unless you had something. I just wanted to check in with you.
Yeah, we had a boy-girl fight, and the mom of the boy came in and was trying to defend how that he hit her, and the parents of the girl pressed charges, and he has to go to all these, I guess it's violent offender or whatever.
Right.
And it was like the same thing you were saying, Kelly, about um, how the parents think that their kid does no wrong. And it was like he hit a girl hard enough that her parents pressed charges. And the mother was just like, he shouldn't have, he shouldn't have had charges pressed against him. And it was just like she was just went on and on and on about how he was not treated right.
know, Amy, that is ever gonna disappear completely, right? It's just the aggressive behavior. You know, I feel like the more that we can do proactively to establish a healthy environment, and when conflict happens or anger erupts, is there are things that we can do, because we want to give people agency. People hit and people lash out because they don't have the tools to do anything else. And so how can we help people have other patterns of behavior that are better? And maybe it is the ability and the safety to come to the teacher, you know, way in advance of it becoming super elevated, and to create almost a process to do that, to say, hey, we're gonna talk about conflict in the workplace. It's sort of the workplace, your workplace, but they're coming to school, but in essence, they're coming to work. And they come to work, school, bringing everything that they dealt with that morning, whatever was happening in their household. If they feel sick, if they are upset about something, if they're agitated. And so self-regulation is not really taught well in the households of most kids. And then we adopt those kids that don't have any tools. And don't have any training, and we've not proactively taught them how to more appropriately use words, to use self-regulation skills, and to take different approaches when they feel like they want to fight, they want to flight, they want to freeze, they want to fawn. So maybe there is an opportunity, and again, we can't solve every problem of every child, we can't control all the parents, but we can begin to create more governance in our own classrooms. And so if we're the president of our classroom, what are the protocols that we can put into place, that we can manage, right? We don't need the school to regulate everything we do. I mean, we can set up our own language, our own processes, when conflict happens, when anger happens, when things erupt. And then how do we have common language as students? And what do we do to support one another? So I don't know that that will solve all the world's problems, y'all. I've not been teaching for 20 years, and many of you have. But I just feel like I would love to see that more done across the board in families, in organizations, in teams, you know, and in school, in boardrooms. And it's like, let's get in front of it rather than, you know, behind it, and then we're reacting rather than in front of it, trying to manage it with more compassion and more process and more common language and understanding the why. So, so I don't know, that's more of a philosophical, but I do think some of that stuff's possible. I mean, I really do.
Thank you for that. I used to do more time doing things like that, but with the course of study and the pacing guide, I kind of try to cut a few, I don't spend as much time on that. And I know we do capturing kids' heart, but it's not quite like that. We do a social contract, but we actually haven't had those conversations of when this, like what you said with the word and everything. So I really appreciate that.
I love the social contract, and, you know, then you get buy-in, especially if the kids can develop it. Can you imagine creating this social contract where you're not saying this is how you're gonna behave? You're gonna go like, what do you guys want in this classroom to feel safe and heard and valued? Let's jointly design this, and let's put common words that we all understand the meaning, and let's hold each other accountable. And if we, you know, aren't doing our part, what can we do to gracefully help each other? If conflict happens, what are the things that we can do to diffuse and support one another? What can I do personally to breathe for 2 minutes before or come to you as a teacher and share my feelings before I just, you know, lash out? And, you know, we know a lot of the behavior that kids bring into their classroom if they're seeing it at home. So that's not the easiest thing to counter, but we can certainly play a part to influence better behavior as teachers. I mean, so we're not just teaching them courses, we're teaching them how to be human. And I know that's a big part of why teachers teach, is we want to change the course of people's lives and how they show up for themselves and in the world. So it's not just the skills that we're giving them, arithmetic, math, English. It really is, how do we help them show up as humans? So it's, we could talk till midnight. This is stuff that's just also interesting to me, and I so appreciate the spirited conversation, and the vulnerability and the sharing and the building on each other's ideas, and all the things that, you know, it takes to collaborate and really come up with solutions. And I don't know that we solved anything significant tonight, but hopefully we created some new ideas around old challenging things that have existed for probably longer than we can imagine, but maybe new ways of looking at those things. And then Barbara, I don't want to shut the conversation down. I just want to make sure that if you wanted to say something and then maybe we wrap up with any final thought from everybody or one final, call to action.
I think that sounds like a great idea. Terry, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Terry was so kind after she saw the engagement last month, knowing that there were, a good number of us wanted to really go deeper into this. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And I think that's a great idea to do a quick little round robin when we're done here. I will say tomorrow the email for the teacher appreciation breakfast is going out for Saturday, April 5th. And I hope that you'll all be able to attend and sign up for that. We'll look forward to seeing you that day. I think it should be a good event. We'll have Professor Dawn Chanland from the Queen's University School of Business speaking on happiness. She does a lot of research into happiness.
Sure
So
does. I know her. She is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, so it should be good. Should be good. Well, with that, I will turn the baton over. And I do think the conversation tonight was great. And I think we all helped each other with different ideas and spaces on how to approach. And maybe we're going to do our own little research here into the issue that Terry was saying about maybe how the male, female, how we approach that, and the idea of what's motivating someone. Maybe that's the issue is, what is motivating that other person? For us, it might be one thing. And for another person, that motivation could be good. So focusing on the motivator, I liked how we kind of came around to that idea. So, all right, with that, Amy, can we start with you? We'll just kind of go down from me. And I don't know if your pictures are the same as mine, but Amy is right there beneath me. So would you like to just wrap up with a couple of thoughts for us tonight?
I think can you hear me?
I think you've frozen on us, Amy. Maybe we'll pop down to Robin and then we'll come back to you at the end, okay? In case you're frozen, Amy. So Robin, do you want to start?
Okay, I'm just happy to talk to adults. But so thank you all. But we use the social contract, and I do like the fact that the students in each period, they put together the social contract. So when someone is doing something, I just say, okay, remember our social contract, keep your hands to yourself.
Yeah.
And that just kind of brings them back in because they know it was their idea. They're the ones that said, keep your hands to yourself. So I've just been referring them, okay, social contract, remember the social contract. So, yeah,
Love
thank
that,
you.
Robin. And just to layer one thing on, in when you're doing the social contract, really discussing the why. The why is it that we're asking for this behavior? What's the impact if we do it well, and what's the impact if we don't? And then people have even a deeper agency around it. So I love that resonated for you, and that you're already doing in some ways the social contract already. So I thank you.
Chantel, would you like to kind of wrap up thoughts?
Got some great ideas on how to, people see it as a positive experience when I come in and not a gotcha kind of moment. And just thinking about the language and just continuing to reflect on that myself. I've been reflecting on how to help people and teachers, and just kind of continue with that. And I think, Robin, you're probably in the same place, just really wanting to help people. That's like I want to share my passion, but need to find out what's in the way.
Chantel, I was thinking literally as you were talking then, such a powerful question is how can I help?
Yeah.
And just not saying another word, how can I help? And then that person will frame in their mind what resonates for them, and they will speak because you've asked a powerful question, and then they will begin to share. And you may give them time, say, hey, take a couple of minutes and just really think about that. I'm in no rush.
Right.
So just a kind of a little final punctuation mark on
Yeah, I like it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Kelly?
empowering and inspiring. So all of you on here inspire me, and I'll keep. Yeah, I don't have anything.
What was your biggest takeaway, Kelly? Besides just the inspiration from being with your fellow coworkers, or at least peers within the same industry.
My biggest takeaway is empathy from other points of view. And I always thought I was out of a box person, but actually this has really helped me see the different, points of view. And I think that's how we grow and change.
Amen. That's well said. Very well said.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. And I think it was really productive. And once again, thanks to Terry, thanks to you guys. And I look forward to seeing everybody April 5th. Okay.